Just with that.
Perhaps
There's a
via
few
Zoom.
people in Zoom, but I can't see them yet, so.
I think I need to turn my speaker off because I'm hearing a little bit of feedback here. Okay.
All right, no one is here from the zoning board. But we have Julia Liederman from the conservation board. We have Hans Schmidt-Henner, and Phyllis Wickerham is live and virtual.
Oh, because I want to see who's on Zoom, because you don't show that.
Okay, then we will begin. Welcome everyone to the Rush Planning Board, June 28th, 2022 meeting. This is an unusual meeting. It was intended to be a workshop with both, joint with both the planning board and the zoning board to work on a couple of mutual items. Flag lots was one, and the second one was informal review applications. We thought we were all set to have about everybody here of those 10 joint members, and it turned out that Rich Anderson couldn't attend, and the zoning board asked if we would try for their July 21st meeting. Unfortunately, we couldn't get agreement to meet then with everybody from the planning board. So we said we'd take the original plan, and unfortunately, apparently nobody's here from the zoning board, but the chairwoman, Lori, Geisel said she would come in on Zoom, but apparently she has not yet, at least. In the meantime, in addition to those two joint workshop items, we've got DSD, and Josh Burdette is here from DSD to request a change in the decommissioning surety from a what's it, a letter. Do you say it again?
Letter of credit.
Letter of credit to a surety bond. And we will talk about that, but I didn't want to hold up all of the zoning board folks. So I said that we'd do that at 8:30. So as it turns out, since there's no zoning folks here, we could take that on first if we wanted to. Since we're not holding them up, maybe we should do that. And that way we're not holding up Josh. Anybody object to that? So we're going to be fluid. It's part of the agenda. We had the joint workshop, which I mentioned. We had the DSD solar request. We had what turns out to be a 2018 agreement between the town of Rush and the Monroe County that we'll talk about later, and approval of minutes from last time, and then the normal applications and other work to look forward to in the future. But if nobody objects, we'll do the DSD item first. I just got to find my stuff.
Scott, I guess with the nature of this DSD, although I don't have to recuse myself because it's been approved, and I guess I don't feel it's conflict of interest deciding of the two different ways of form of surety for the decommission, but because I own the property, I will excuse myself. I feel it's more of the right to do. I'll go sit in the hallway.
So Jeff, I'll speak to that. You can, this is a public meeting, so I think it is, certainly acceptable for you to recuse yourself, but you can sit in the audience. You don't have to vacate the room entirely.
Okay.
As long as you're able to obviously keep to yourself like the rest of the public.
I will do that.
Wait a minute.
You don't know who you're talking to. Worth a shot.
Now, Robert and I had discussed that, and it's a bit of a change from, I think, the prior attorney firm that this is, you being in the room is all right. Just don't make faces at us. That's all.
Just don't look at it.
No coughing up there in your throat.
Yeah. Okay, so this follows a series of emails. And I can let Josh himself explain it. But essentially, it started with the fact that DSD, which stands for, it's an acronym for something solar something, right?
Distributed solar development.
Okay.
So
Distributed sol-
creatively, yeah.
They essentially bought out the agreement from Forefront, and the town code is very specific about that. Along with that buyout comes all the financial obligations that were part of it. So the default is that we remain with a letter of credit for the same amount for the future decommissioning costs. But DSD has asked that that be changed to a surety bond. And Josh, you want to talk about that? I have some documents to go through that I'll embellish whatever you have to say.
Okay, yeah, sure. First of all, nice to meet you all. As we've said, my name is Josh Burdette, project manager at DSD. And yeah, as of April 12th, I believe it was, we extended a notice to the town that said that we, as DSD, acquired the project company from Forefront Power that is comprising of the Warner Solar project. And so now DSD owns all the obligations, all the entitlements, et cetera, for the project, and is responsible for carrying it through construction and long-term asset ownership. And so that being the case, us as a business has come through and just suggested one red line to the decommissioning agreement. As we stated earlier, to move from a letter of credit to a surety bond as the financial assurance for the decommissioning agreement. And my high level understanding of the two different forms is, one, the letter of credit is a promise like issued by a bank that says that should the party default on their obligation to perform said decommissioning, the town would have the right, based on a proposed certain amount of documentation that you would have to provide to the bank, you would have the right to go and claim that money. In a similar fashion, yet slightly different, a surety bond is issued by an insurance company, and the town, same in a similar fashion, should the owner default on their obligation to uphold the decommissioning agreement, the town has a right to submit a claim to the insurance company for to go and get that money under the agreement. And so it's a slightly different format. Why did we propose the change? Because basically it's a large sum of money, and for a letter of credit, that's like your tag capital for us. So we would have to post that or have it secluded in some fashion, right, as a reimbursement. Should DSD default on something like that, then the money has to be available to go get it. As opposed to a surety bond where, like a regular insurance policy, you pay a premium. So as the owner, DSD would pay a premium on all of our surety bonds, which is basically every project that we own across the business. And then the insurance company is on the hook to pay those dollars. And so they recoup their cost by having a large portfolio of, obligations, and then, they fulfill their premium costs and get reimbursed in that fashion. So that's what's before you tonight. And I will, so that's the red line that's before you. I'll just mention that I think on the prior resolution, which was on March 9th, 2022, it does reference the form of surety, and I'll just read the subset here. FFP New York Rush Project 1 LLC, which is the project company that I alluded to earlier, now DSD owns, has provided or agrees to provide an irrevocable letter of credit, bond, or other form of surety, security reasonably acceptable to the town engineer and attorney for the town in the aforementioned amount, etc. And so we don't propose any change to the aforementioned amount or any of the obligations under the agreement other than surety. So that's
Okay, thanks. That was, I think, a fairly good description. Appreciate that. I will say, in case anybody's wondering, why is the planning board talking about this? And it just says, Pursuant to the terms of TRC decommissioning plan, the planning board must approve of the form of surety in light of the proposed change in the surety form. My suggestion, this is from, I believe, David Howe, is that the planning board consider this at its next meeting. So, and if we find it acceptable, we would adopt the resolution that approves the change in surety form. So it seems to be just what the law has required, and that's why this board is reviewing it. Now, in addition to what Josh nicely describes, I'm certainly, and I doubt if anybody here at the table is either a financial expert or an expert in these sorts of things at all. But I do have this article here, which seems to be quite good and explains the differences between surety bonds in places of letters of credit. And I'm going to read some of it. It says there are key differences between the two instruments. A letter of credit is a promise by a bank to advance up to a certain amount of money to one deal party if the other party defaults. So just like Josh said, a surety bond is a guarantee in which a third party, often an insurance company, agrees to assume a defaulting party's financial obligations. They're similar, but there are legal differences that could affect a beneficiary's ability to obtain full and prompt payment on its claim. Beneficiaries, known as obligees, if I said that right, prefer letters of credit over surety bonds because letters of credit generally are easier to collect upon, usually merely by presentation of certain documentation. Payment under surety bonds is usually a more drawn-out process, involves a greater risk of litigation on the underlying commercial transaction and any other defenses that may be available to the surety company. So that would suggest that for the town of Rush, trying to collect in the case of a default, there's more risk for the surety bond. Going on and skipping a lot of paragraphs, because letters of credit are independent from the underlying transactions, they are often more attractive to beneficiaries because there's no need to prove a breach of the underlying contract or the extent to which the beneficiary suffered damages. Further, traditional defenses and claims in contract law do not apply to letter of credit transactions because a letter of credit is governed by its own set of legal principles. Thus, from the point of view of a beneficiary, letters of credit are enforceable against an issuer regardless of the bankruptcy of the applicant. At the same time, surety bonds, like other financial guarantees, are attractive to principals because they do not appear on a corporation's balance sheet, and their use does not diminish a company's line of credit. In addition, surety bonds are generally cheaper to procure and maintain and may not require posting of collateral to the surety by the principal obligor. And there's a set of discussion here, paragraphs about making sureties work like letters of credit. The key to successfully persuading these counterparties to accept a surety bond is to craft a surety bond to minimize the disadvantages of a surety bond compared to a letter of credit. One way to minimize the disadvantages of surety bonds is to draft the terms of a surety bond so that they provide protections to the beneficiary that are similar to those contained in a letter of credit. Since this traditional surety bond is subject to the surety's defense that no default of the underlying agreement has occurred, the obligee could change the payment trigger on the bond from one relating to the occurrence of an event of default to one simply triggered due to the presentation of a proper notice of default, notice of payment, or other agreed upon documentation. Further, because the surety enjoys many of the same defenses that are available to a principal, the obligee should negotiate for language in the surety bond that waives the surety's ability to assert these defenses. Typical provision should state that the surety's obligations are absolute and unconditional, irrespective of the circumstance whatsoever that might constitute a legal or equitable discharge or defense of a surety, and include an express waiver by the surety of such defenses. So I think it's time for the board to discuss our thoughts. There seems to be a disadvantage to the town. At the same time, I can understand DSD's wish for a surety bond. And it does seem, based on this article, that a surety bond could be crafted where it provides the same security to the town, but provides the benefit of not being on the balance sheet as essentially a debt for DSD. And I'd be willing to pursue that option at least. Any thoughts?
I have a couple thoughts.
So you're right on what you read. I also did some digging. I went through 5 separate websites. So all the websites are very detailed, but everything I read, I kept popping out. The bond is good for the contractor. Nowhere did it say it was good for the town. Then to the letter of credit, to what I could read, what I interpreted was, if you have a letter of credit, say the town of Rush says, Carl Musnier, for example, you didn't do it right. It's payable on demand. It's gotta be paid. With a bond, we need to understand that a bond, the contractor can say, oh, no, we did it right, tied up in litigation, which means town of Rush taxpayers pay that bill. I'm not in favor of that, guys. I really don't want to do that. Letter of credit is the way to go. The bond, the letter of credit does stay on the balance sheet. There's no doubt about it. As a businessman, I know it stays on the sheet. But I would be more apt to say I want a letter of credit and not a bond, because a bond to me puts the town at risk. I don't want the town at risk. I don't want to pay more money for attorney. That's my 2 cents.
Any other thoughts?
I have a question. So as far as a surety bond, there's a premium of insurance policy. So that's an annual paid premium. How do we know that that is continually going to be paid? What is there a mechanism that would be a direct deposit? Is it, what happens if you default on the premium?
Then
Does the surety bond become null and void? And what is the term of the surety bond?
the term of the surety bond is a couple different ways. You can, it's for the life of the project regardless, but you can do it on an annual.
So it's actually described as life of the project.
You can do it on whatever the project is contracted for under the lease. You can do it for however that's worded, right? Like Scott was saying, you can kind of tailor the bond.
Right. Is
language
that
to say
20
what you
years?
want
Is
to
that
say.
30 years?
Well, it could say 30 years. Because if it's a 20-year lease with 2 5-year options. you can do it for 30 years, right? And so you can tailor that language to be what you want. As far as the first question, how do you know that it's still in effect? There's a mitigation option where we actually issue, or what we've been doing with our surety agreement is that we've been issuing annual forms. And then so the form is only good for 1 year. And so that, every year there's a check-in point for that. But as far as like the financial mitigation, I can't. I'm not an attorney. I can't speak to that.
Well, that's my concern is that someone has to be paying attention for 20 to 30 years. And
I think there's an obligation under the resolution to revisit the bonds. Maybe it's year 7.5 or 12.5. I don't remember, but there's
12.5.
Is it 12.5? Okay, so there's an
Okay.
obligation with the resolution currently with the town to do that. Plus, we could issue an annual form like we've been doing for the annual checking fees, which would you would know that would demonstrate that it's still in good standing.
Is that a surety bond just for this project, or are other projects all wrapped into that?
No, the bond
This
is
is
just
just
for
for that.
this one project.
With
Our
the with the-
agreement is for,
right, with the town of Rush as the obligation.
yeah. I mean, I'll point out too that like this is probably on every project that we develop, that there is some form of decommissioning insurance. I've never done a letter of credit before in my years of developing projects. It's always been a surety bond. So that's been, precedent accepted form. There's some risk mitigation to the town in that DSD is owned by BlackRock. And so we're-
Surety.
we're the largest asset management company in the world. And
Yeah.
so, we're backed by that kind of capital institution. And so there's that risk mitigation to the town as well. We have a portfolio of projects that's nationwide. We have obligations all over the place, and the precedent with the state too. I will mention this, like for state issuance of permits, whether that's on like a landfill or a teeny species take permit, something along those lines. Like a surety bond is a form of acceptable financial assurance mechanism for New York State. I actually just issued one
What types of projects?
for these projects.
For these projects, but you're mentioning other ones. Are
For
those,
ones that the state has jurisdiction over.
long-term,
landfills, yeah,
those are long-term.
they're for the life of the park.
My concern is the town does not have a history of paying attention to all the details. And so I guess I'm in agreement with Steve that I would rather see a letter of credit. Only because it's a better mechanism and lowers the risk for the town.
We could do something, because I will say, like, a letter of credit, in the time, we're a little bit time sensitive here with the full issuance of the building permit, right? Because right now we're authorized to perform the preliminary work in order to keep National Grid on our schedule. So that's part of the request kind of built into that. And so in order to keep that on track, like, it's easier for us to streamline, with the full surety agreement, like I said before, just add this project to that. And so that's preferable, but we can definitely open up, like Scott mentioned earlier, some negotiation around the bond form language, and so that we can make it, it can still be a surety bond, but we can make it speak like, a letter of credit or de-risk the mitigation for the town on the back end in some form. That if that is helpful to the town, then we could definitely explore that option.
When does this go into effect? After construction and commissioning, or it goes into effect immediately?
It could go into effect immediately. So, because I think one of, of course, this is not gonna happen, but, it should the project be half constructed and the owner walk away, the town would be covered under an effective date that was
Okay,
pre-operation, right?
Okay, anything else from the board? John Hinman did say that surety bonds are kind of typical, more common in his view of this kind of project. And I know David Howell said early on, he had no real problems with a surety bond. But after reading this article, Robert did craft some additional language that could be added. And it is that if we agree to go with surety bond, it says the terms of the surety bond, these would be conditions for a resolution. The terms of the surety bond will provide for the trigger of payment to be presentation of a proper notice of default or other agreed upon documentation rather than the occurrence of an event of default in form to be approved by the attorney for the town. That was one. Number two, the terms of the surety bond will waive the surety's ability to assert legal and equitable defenses in forms to be approved by the attorney for the town. So those could be added to a resolution. I don't know if that makes our members feel better, or if DSD would prefer just to keep the letter of credit rather than have that sort of thing added to a surety bond.
I
Because-
don't think so.
I'm sorry, say that
I
again.
don't think that's preferential. I would rather negotiate the surety bond form
With,
that
with,
way
with those conditions.
than, than do a little.
The reality is too, in terms of those conditions, is that DSC may not, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but DSC may not be the ultimate end all be all in terms of what the insurance company is going to want to be involved with whether or not they're able to raise legal defenses. And so we can make it a condition and see if we run into the issue that the insurance company says, no way, well, then you're sort of back to a letter of credit as well. Does that make sense?
That's good.
Because I don't know, and Josh probably doesn't know whether or not the insurance company would be willing to waive their legal equitable defenses. And they might think that isn't acceptable to them. So that's something to consider as well.
But the default is back to letter of credit.
Right, because we would, the way that we would have to draft the resolution so that it would say that the only way you're getting the surety bond is if these conditions are met. And if they're not met, then you're back to letter of credit. But again, that's just another avenue. And obviously the board can decide the letter of credit if they want.
Steve and Carl, you're still feeling like letter of credit would still be the best way to go for the town. Is that fair?
For my input, yes. I want the town protected. And
the attorney says it's okay, he's accepted the surety bond and doesn't have any problem with it.
He did.
Yeah, so Dave's position is right there. He's not making the decision whether or not it's a bond, a surety bond, or a letter of credit. His point is, A, the engineers approved the amount, and B, either way, the town is protected to the, and obviously there's concerns about to the extent they're protected, but from our legal standpoint, if there's a bond in place, then there is protection all for the town. But Dave's not opining that that is the best option for the town, or that the planning board should decide one way. That's up to you.
I think so who is negotiating this, the terms?
Well, so you'd have to, the insurance company would be the one who would
Yeah, so it
dictate
would
why,
have to be.
when they would give the bond, right? They're the ones who would be saying, well, we will provide them money.
Okay.
Yep.
So I guess in
Which we
these,
would facilitate. I'll just-
Right.
these conditions, if they accept these conditions, then I think that just whatever we can do to reduce the risk to the town. And if these reduce that risk by adding those conditions,
Yes,
I would be okay.
we can walk through it. So Scott read them off, but the first one, and again, this is from the article that Scott had pulled.
Actually, Gene found it.
Gene found it.
Thank you.
The first one says that it's presentation of proper notice of default as opposed to an event of default. So the first example that was raised was, well, no, there wasn't actually an event of default because we did the project right. Right. So the idea of this condition is to say, no, it's whenever we give you a notice that there has been a default, not whether or not there actually has been an actual event that we can argue about. And the second one is that they waive legal and equitable defenses. But again, whether the insurance company is willing to agree to that, I don't know. Obviously, insurance companies try not to pay out money. That's not their idea. So
And do we know who's going to sign off on the decommissioning when it's done?
the town, I think the town supervisor is the one authorizing the resolution.
So I came into this meeting at a very high level understanding of what I thought we should end up with. And one was, we should either be in a position where the town is better off, which makes sense, right? And that's unlikely to happen with any scenario. Or number two, the town is no worse off and DSD is better off, right? Which at least gets somebody something without doing any harm to the town. So the surety bond may do the second. It may do no harm with these conditions, may do no harm to the town, but it's better for DSD and have no reason to want to punish anybody. But as I said, I'm certainly not a financial expert to have a gut feeling about what all these things do. So at this point, we ought to do a resolution in a way that we think will pass, and which needs 3 of us. Right? If it's just 2 of us agreeing, then I assume it doesn't pass and the opposite occurs.
Yeah, if there's no majority, then they can't make a decision or resolution to change it.
So we do have a resolution prepared, and I can read it in the favorable form with these 2 conditions that we discussed. And if 3 of us agree to that, then it's passed. If only 2 agree, then it fails. And we don't have to do anything else beyond that, right? We don't have to pass a resolution of denying, for example.
Just a quick question. Did the town board talk about it? Do they have any?
No, because it was at the discretion of the planning board whether to accept that request to change the form of the guarantee from a bond, from a letter of credit to the bond. It's up to you guys. So we can't
I'm surprised it being
technically,
such a complicated, high-level thing that it would be at this board's decision.
Well, it's right here. It says ownership changes. If the owner operator of the tier 3 solar energy system changes, or the owner of the property changes, the successor owner and or operator shall assume in writing all of the obligations of the solar energy systems overlay district site plan approval and decommissioning plan.
Mhm.
We have already, as a board, approved this plan.
Mhm.
This is clear, shall, not, we go back and read it,
I
it says
think-
shall.
I think that's not a question. Yeah.
Well, then why are, Scott, if it says shall, why are we, that's
It's
a cut and dried
no,
statement.
certainly if we do nothing, the current position stands, the letter of credit stands. That's not an issue. There's no question that DSD has taken over all financial responsibilities of Forefront Power.
I would think the attorney for the town would have the ultimate say that this is good, it's bad, but it's just my thought.
Like I said, this is up to the planning board to decide. Either way, the town is protected and the amount has been agreed upon. But as has been noted by this board, there's different ways to do it. And one of them obviously offers pros and cons for the developer, and one of them offers pros and cons for the town.
Town engineer made a statement that they have no issue with the bond. In fact, it's used on many projects. So I've reviewed the modification and decommissioning agreement, I have no comments to add. I do not have any issue with the bond. Most solar projects I work on use bonds. Can you make that same statement? To the.
I have, yeah, for most of the constructions that I see, it's usually a bond. That being said, I have also seen litigation, right, as a result of that, so full disclosure.
Certainly, we would all feel more comfortable keeping it as a letter of credit. It feels better, and I think our lack of detailed understanding and experience doesn't leave you to a position of comfort in changing it in a direction that potentially is worse.
Exactly.
All right. That's our feeling. I can read this resolution with a denial. All right. So I make a motion that whereas on August 12, 2020, pursuant to resolution numbers 161/2020 and section 12074 of the zoning law of the town of Rush, the town zoning law, the Rush Town Board approved the application for the creation of a solar energy systems overlay district for the development of the Werner Solar 5 megawatt alternating current photovoltaic array on 22.28 acres, the project site of an approximately 116.48 acre parcel of land located at 8427 West Henry Road, Rush, New York, the property, the foregoing proposed project, the solar energy system. And whereas on October 20, 2020, the Town of Rush Planning Board, the Planning Board, issued a special permit approval and site plan approval for the solar energy system. Said site plan was amended and ratified by the Planning Board at its November 17, 2020 meeting. And whereas on March 9, 2022, pursuant to resolution number 115-2022, the Rush Town Board authorized the town supervisor to execute a proposed solar energy decommissioning agreement, with FFP New York Rush Project 1 LLC. And whereas all rights, interests, and obligations in the solar energy system, including but not limited to the September 2020 solar energy decommissioning plan, the decommissioning plan, and the proposed decommissioning agreement were subsequently assigned to Distributed Solar Development LLC, DSD. And whereas the proposed solar energy decommissioning agreement currently requires that DSD, as the owner operator of the solar energy system, execute and file prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy with the town clerk an irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of $435,474. And whereas DSD has requested that it be allowed to provide security for the solar energy system in the form of a surety bond rather than letter of credit in the amount of the same amount, $435,474. And whereas according to the decommissioning plan, the planning board is authorized to approve of the type of security required before the issuance of a building permit. And whereas DSD's request to replace the aforementioned letter of credit with a surety bond was discussed by the planning board on June 28, 2022, and DSD's representative was permitted to speak in favor of its request. And whereas the planning board has examined the proposed decommissioning agreement, their October 2020 special permit approval and site plan approval as amended on November 17, 2022, the decommissioning plan, the town board's March 9, 2022 resolution, and all other materials associated with this matter, and all having reviewed all current plans and reports, including comments and reports from town professional staff. And now therefore be it resolved that upon consideration by the planning board denies DSD's request and permits DSD to provide, no, forget that. Let me start over. Now therefore be it resolved that upon consideration by the planning board denies DSD's request. Yeah, and determines that DSD must provide an irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of $435,474 as security for the solar energy decommissioning agreement in forms as may be approved by the town engineer and attorney for the town. Be it further resolved that, that's it.
Okay, you don't need to do that.
You don't need to do that. I think I got that right after all. Shelley, would you do a roll call?
Member Ost?
Aye.
Member McPherson?
Aye.
Member Werzer?
Aye.
Chairman Strott?
Aye. Okay, again, I think our conservatism for the town is fine. I can't say it's wrong for sure. Sorry, Josh, we tried and we gave it a discussion.
Thanks for the time, folks.
Thank you.
Come on up, Jeff. Okay, so we'll go back to the original workshop plan. So we'll go to the flag lot code update. Now this, I'll go through a somewhat lengthy presentation on this. Keep in mind that this is not the joint meeting where we would have an interactive discussion with the zoning board.
I just
So-
wanted to check to see, I'm sorry.
See if anybody else is on.
No, we have John Morelli, Julia Lieberman, Hans Schmittner, and I believe Pat and Bob Kraus.
Okay. Okay, so it's to be determined what we will do with the zoning board. They do have a meeting, I believe it's July 21st. I can certainly go and do this presentation with them. And I would say that anybody else is welcome to come. That all needs to be formalized and agreed to by them. I'm really surprised none of them are here tonight. So, yeah, you might want to just turn the old chair around. You'll be getting a stiff neck. That's part of the reason that I wanted to have access to this on my laptop so I can read off of it and not off of there. I'm nearsighted. I wouldn't do a good job reading anyway. So it's probably everybody here knows what a flag lot is. This thing here that looks like a flagpole or access corridor, and the main portion of the lot is a flag lot, and its appearance is what gives it its name. So the main portion here is to the rear of not only the road that the access corridor comes out on, but also to the rear of other so-called frontage lots on the road. So this will include a code update proposal that many of you have already seen. These are the topics that I'll cover. Flag lot definition, why flag lots are used, at least in my understanding, the current code and intent of prior town boards who approved that code many, many years ago, benchmarks with other towns who have flag lot difficulties, proposed code update that I have provided and how it compares to the current code, and some specifics and comments about each section of that, and then hopefully a discussion and path forward. Again, at least what we can do without the zoning board members present. The zoning board did discuss this, I believe, at their May meeting. And one of the comments from one of the members, I'm sorry, April, discussion of flag lots, quote, "The proposal seems restrictive and does not have the safety or welfare of the residents in mind. This seems like an attempt to stop development within the town of Rush." What I like about this statement is it gets nicely at the heart of the issues, which are, as I see it, and keep these in mind as we go through the proposal. Number one, the proposal is restrictive compared to the current town code. And I will say that I've had comments that the proposal is not restrictive enough, that a flag lot should be a hardship to get approved, and we don't want to be making it easier to do that. And other people have, as this example said, it's more restrictive, so maybe it's about right. But anyway, number two, the proposal harms the safety and welfare of residents. The reason for the proposal is personal opinion about development on my part. I'll return to these three parts near the end of the presentation, and some of the comments will become obvious as we go through. So this was the town attorney, then John Mancuso with Harris Beach in January of 2019. We had a case come up. We really weren't sure whether the lot, or actually two lots in question, were flag lots or not. So he investigated the code and came to very specific detailed opinion that if this is a flag lot down here, this green here, this dotted line, which you probably can't see, is the front setback, right? The minimum setback. And so it's a minimum lot width of 150 feet, which is, I think, typical of R20 and R30. Minimum frontage on the street is 50 feet in our town code, and the front setback is either 100 or 110 feet, as you'll see. So you don't need to pay too much attention to that. This is what it means. A flag lot is a non-conforming lot which has a width less than the minimum lot width, which is 150 feet for R30, 100 feet for R20, as in section 120-17, at the minimum front setback, which is 110 feet on state and county roads and 100 feet on all other roads. And that's in section 120-18. John Mancuso felt that was unequivocally the definition based on the verbiage in the town code. All lots must meet the road frontage width requirements, which is 50 feet minimum. And notice that the lot width can be less than the minimum width between the road and the minimum front setback. And that's, for example, why pie-shaped cul-de-sac lots can be conforming. So it has to meet the minimum lot width at the minimum front setback.
Sorry to interrupt. I couldn't, because I got a little curious. The first one's 150 feet for R, and it's blanked out. What is that, R30?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
I see. Okay. All right, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. It would have been nice if that 30 was over here.
I just misread it.
I must have had a space in there which allowed it to put it on the next line. So why are flag lots used? Well, let me first talk about why they're not used by bigger developers of major residential tracts. This, in fact, is the one non-preferred proposal for the Foster Brooks property, right? This being Henrietta along the northern west side as this is laid out. And they are looking to develop that Foster Brooks property, and they don't use flag lots. You notice there's no frontage lots whatsoever along the road here. Everything runs off a public road. So instead of frontage lots and flag lots, they build dedicated public roads with cul-de-sacs to use up the property. I mentioned there's no frontage lots fronting the main road on development like this whatsoever. That's typical of big developments everywhere you look. I suspect that larger towns that are typically have more and larger tracts don't need or allow flag lots, or at least certainly not as commonly as we do in Rush. And that's why.
Can I ask a question about cul-de-sacs?
Mhm.
Do they have a smaller window of frontage because they're
No,
on
it's
a
still
circle?
50, it's still 50 feet.
Oh,
But that's why I said the minimum is 50 feet, right, for any lot. But it says that these lots to be conforming must be, what is it, 100 or 150 feet by time they get to the minimum setback. So they're pie shaped and they're big enough, far enough back that they're conforming. Why are flag lots used? Well, frontage lots are sold off. This is Rush Mendon Road 251, just a little east of the hamlet. Frontage lots are sold off, right? by developers of small residential tracts in less developed towns so that they can avoid the costs of and the time required to build roads and do it, with a public road and cul-de-sacs, as I just showed, with bigger tracts. So thereby they can quickly profit from selling off these lots or developing them, just using the frontage lots. So these are all frontage lots here. And you'll notice there's a couple of potential future access driveways there. This may not be a flag lot. You can't see what it does further off to the right, which would be towards the east. There may be some missing lots, and as long as there's the minimum width there somewhere, that would still be a conforming lot and not a flag lot. So there are access corridors in that example just shown between the frontage lots, and they're typically saved for future roads or for flag lot use as part of the remaining lands. Now, the remaining lands being that rear portion. In fact, remaining lands, I use that term because that's in the town code. Remaining lands cannot be landlocked, so access corridors must be provided. The remaining land lot can be a conforming lot, as I mentioned, with a larger access width elsewhere. The remaining lands are eventually re-subdivided using either a road, whether it's public or private, for multiple residences, or a single residence driveway for a flag lot, which in that case would be rather large. So this is the remaining lands, and this is potentially a flag lot if this is subdivided out, or it could be a road and could be totally conforming. I'm talking now about neighborhood impacts of flag lots. This is an actual example on Honeyway Falls number 5 road, just west of Works Road. This is the Peanut Trail, so Works Road is over to the right. Actually, these two properties up here are mine. So my property's back up against them. They are not bad looking. I don't have any complaints, but it's one of the better examples of flag lots in the town. I'm going to point out this building right here in the center. This lot actually came before us a year or two ago, and this lot line was squared off with the side lot lines, so it's no longer parallel to the road as this one is. So it was modified to come down here like this, and this guy, who I know well, is a great guy, built a barn right here in front of his house. So it's on his property, but it sits right behind this frontage lot here. So it's curious that with a flag lot, this access corridor in the current code is considered to be part of the setback.
Is that his driveway?
That's his driveway. Yeah, that's his driveway. We'll talk about more about driveways in the next slide. So this barn could be in front of his residence because this is all considered part of the setback in the current code. The other impact is added driveways. Now it's the same picture, just a little bit smaller. And you notice there's a frontage lot, this one right here, and it has driveways on both sides of them, right, for this lot and this lot. And here there are literally 3 driveways right in a row. This access corridor with a driveway for this lot, this access corridor with a driveway for that lot, and then the residence's own driveway, 3 driveways side by side. So I want to compare that to section A125.21, construction of roads and streets, J, highway frontage in the town code. And this is it. Now I'm going to read it because you probably can't read that. It says, number 1, to promote and protect the public health, safety, and welfare, it shall be the policy of the town planning board to control the number of entrances and exits onto and off from state, county, and town highways. This policy is adopted toward the end that safer highways shall result, more cohesive neighborhoods be developed, and the budding property owners shall not be unduly and unnecessarily inconvenienced in the future when it becomes necessary to widen highways to accommodate greater traffic flows. Now that may not happen often, but I understand the concept about more driveways. 3, to implement the policy described in subsection J1 above, which is the first bullet up there, of this statement of policy. The town planning board shall, from time to time, as part of the process of approving sketches, maps, plots, plats, or plans, require that the applicant grant to the town of Rush such easements as are required to provide access to contiguous properties onto a public highway via frontage or service roads, common driveway, or such other roadways as are required, so that the number of entrances and exits onto and off from state, county, and town highways are not increased. So what this says is that flag lots with more highways is what is unsafe for the public health, safety, and welfare, not the other way around, according to the town code.
And Scott, could you back up 2 slides now? I'm thinking, I mean, maybe you know better than I do. Was it possible all 3 driveways came out at the crest of the knoll? on that
No,
road
it's
for
pretty,
site
it's pretty
distance?
flat. No, it's pretty flat there. If anyway, this is a very gradual rise all the way up here.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just curious about site distance, if that's what, why. There has been some other lots in town where they've used a common drive to access.
Yeah, it's true. You can have
West End
situations,
Road, there's one.
you can have situations where it's safer to put a driveway in one side because of a hill type of thing.
Yeah,
My daughter's house in Mendon is exactly that example, coming up the hill from Rochester Junction. So we're going to talk more about frontage roads and what they are. I cannot recall ever seeing the use of or consideration of frontage or service roads in Rush. Although Park Lane south of Montesano's to beyond the bend of the 15A in the hamlet is an example of one. And there's a better example of a frontage road in Mendon, west and north of Saxby's Implement Corporation. I'll show you both of these. So this is from the county mapping system. So here's 15A making the bend here, right? Montesano's is right here. And this is Park Lane. You notice that these residents here do not abut on 15A, but rather on this, which effectively is a frontage road. I don't know if it was designed as a frontage road or intended to serve that purpose or how it got there, but in effect, that is a frontage road. That it prevents each of these houses from having a driveway on a pretty critical piece of road right there. This is the Mendon example I mentioned. This is very striking. You probably can't see it. So this road here, this is Victor Mendon Road 251. This is Miles Square Road that goes to the north. If you drive a little further up there and go to the right and towards Fisher's, you pass Golisano's house, right? Saxby's is off to the right on the lower part of 251. These 9 houses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, are all accessed on the 251 by this road. Right? There's a little road right here. And this frontage road runs right along here that you can hardly see. It's all treed and you hardly notice it when you go by there.
Family friend is a memory.
Oh, yeah? How about that? It looks very nice, but it's not common. Oops, went the wrong way. Do they? So following up, the term common driveways tends to be driven by residents' proximity rather than the intent to reduce road access in Rush. However, there are examples of common shared driveways in Rush, and I'll show you some. East Henrietta Road, south of Leary School, and the Welcome to Rush sign. There's a series of houses there, 2 lots each have a common driveway. And I'm going to talk about Pheasant Run off of Pinnacle that serves at least 13 lots. That's a strange one. We'll talk more about that. It's really more like a private drive than it is a common driveway. So this is East Henrietta Road, north of the hamlet. And you notice that this house and this house, their driveways are on opposite sides of the houses, and they both come out together in the middle. Same way with this house and this house, common driveways come out together right there. And this house and this house come out right there. This cannot be a coincidence. This had to be designed, and it had to be based on the frontage road or minimizing of access roads onto highways. This is Pheasant Run, a very strange one. This is Pinnacle Road here. It's actually came up for a subdivision a year or so ago with a number of flag lots. This is Pheasant Run. And you notice that all these lots back here don't have houses. And as you drive along here, you see these frontage houses here. You don't notice this. It looks like an undeveloped field, right? You don't even know that there's this road here. This was never paved. These two houses, you notice they're on an angle or sideways. Their driveways actually do come out on Pheasant Run. And Pheasant Run is unpaved, so they have paved driveways come out to a gravel road here. During the re-subdivision, this road was, first of all, let me go to the next slide. I'm calling this a common driveway example. It's more like a private road that has no basis in the town code, based on the number of houses or lots on it. But it was allowed or approved by a planning board long ago. I don't know how long ago, but before the last two planning boards are in existence. The driveway area was originally owned by the primary landowner of the unsold lots. That was Betty Neisner. The implementation of that whole thing was poor because none of the common driveway was ever paved, and only the two frontage lots use it. Now, after the re-subdivision, one of the residents of one of those frontage roads on either side, I forget which one, owns that driveway area, and easements are provided to all the other lots that are back there that don't look like lots because they're undeveloped. So the current code and intent of prior town boards, this is not hard to infer, as indicated by the definition of flag lots and the fact that they are non-conforming. The writers and approvers of the current town code, prior town boards, did not want flag lots, or they could have made them conforming. Fewer driveways and not more flag lots are stated to promote and protect the public health, safety, and welfare in section A 125-21, construction of roads and streets, highway frontage. The intent to prevent flag lots was confirmed in 2014 with the approval of local law 1 as code section A 125-60, private roads, including design specs as a site development detail number 13 for private road section, parentheses, non-dedicated right-of-way in the zoning appendix. The purpose of this new code section to be A 125-60 private roads, and let me explain that is not in the town code. It was written in 2014. It exists in the legislation, but that was lost during updating of a much bigger section containing, including all of the construction specifications. So it's a real law. It's just not findable in the town code where it's intended to be. It's supposed to be getting put there finally. So the purpose of the new code section was to provide an alternative flag lots and comply with a highway frontage intent, if not the wording, that did not require the high developer cost of building a public road and did not require the town to maintain a public road just for a few residents. So developers don't like to build roads, public roads for a few residents, and the town doesn't want to maintain the roads or plow the roads for just a few residents. The private road features, this new town code section, features 2 to 4 lots. This private road can be used for 2 to 4 lots only. Intent was to be set up by the developer, but owned by one resident with shared easement and shared maintenance costs for the other users. So there is a design specification. It shows a total of 40 feet width. It shows a road that is 9 feet here with a 3-foot shoulder, another 9 feet. So that would be only 18 feet wide with 3-foot shoulders on each side. So we're up 26 feet. And this 8-foot area on either side, which potentially could be used for utilities. And these bullets down here essentially state what I already stated. So again, current code intent of prior town boards. Given that flag lots are non-conforming with the basic town code, inconsistent with highway frontage rules, and inconsistent with the availability of other options such as public and private roads, what is our justification for past and ongoing approvals of multiple and/or concentrated flag lots? Isn't the town code supposed to provide our guiding principles and requirements we must adhere to? This is where I go into benchmarks with other towns. So we're not unique. Flag lot sections are quite common in less developed towns in their codes. The search feature in E-code is very helpful for finding them. Not everybody calls them flag lots, but essentially all of those codes provide substantial guidance and conditions for flag lots. And the two I'm going to refer to primarily are Riga, population 5,600, and somewhat Wheatland, population 4,800, are good nearby benchmarks in the same county. And Russia population is even smaller. So this is a Riga flag lot code, section 9572, amended way back in 1998. And here's some excerpts. Flag lots are approved by the planning board, not the zoning board of approval. Quote, that no more conventional approach to the creation of the lot is reasonable. The minimum area of the interior portion of the lot exclusive of the access way shall be 3 acres. So that would be what I call the main portion, has a minimum of 3 acres. If you remember my proposal, I said 2. The access way width shall be 66 feet and uniform width shall not exceed 1,000 feet in length, nor be less than 200 feet. The 1,000 and 200 are very similar to the proposal I made. I tried to be more sophisticated with a 66 feet, and in fact, on his own, John Hinman came back and said 66 feet is kind of a standard width. He really recommends 66 feet. We'll get to that later. But here's more from the Riga flag lot code. No access way shall be closer to another access way to a flag lot than 500 feet. That obviously is to control the number of driveways in a small area. No structure of any type shall be erected on the access way. I'll talk more about that. All access ways shall be designed to permit adequate access for fire and rescue equipment. Certainly we're in favor of that. And we have rules around turnoffs, for example, in certain number of hundreds of feet. And quote, the planning board shall require the siting of any structures on the interior lot in such manner as will assure the privacy of adjacent properties and shall require such plantings, screenings, or berms as may be necessary to protect such privacy at the time of construction and thereafter. This is Wheatland, which is not so different, but I'm just going to read a few bullets there. It's not as detailed as Riga's. Use of a flag lot represents the only method of developing a site. If direct frontage access to a parcel or a portion of a parcel can be provided by an existing or new public or private road, a flag lot shall not be proposed. The access strip serving any permitted flag lot shall not exceed 300 feet in length. That seems very restrictive to me, but that's what they say. Other benchmarks, I'll just say in general, towns that are more lenient with flag lots typically restrict the number of allowed somehow. A maximum of 10% of lots is sometimes specified, but that type of limit can be difficult to define. Which lots constitute the total? In the particular subdivision they're looking at in a given subdivision or prior or nearby subdivisions that may have been done previously. And how is the percentage rounded up or down? 10% of 4 or even 9 lots, if you have to round down, could be 0 allowed. So I'm getting towards the proposed code update. Despite the large number of existing flag lots in Rush, a common request for a flag lot is from a resident landowner with a large lot who wants to sell off the quote, the back 40 acres as a way to fund their life and retirement. The most common request for a flag lot has been a very small subdivision that creates a single flag lot. That's certainly true of our recent experience, so we have had up to 3 in one subdivision. That now requires an extra zoning board of appeals step for an area variance, which often adds a month or more for the applicant and could be argued adds no value to the town. Therefore, the proposal allows the planning board to approve a single flag lot with a new subdivision. So why just one lot per subdivision? Well, with proper width of the access corridor, one flag lot serving the back remaining lands has the ability to become conforming simply by addition of a public or private road. If the flag lot instead is used for a single residence driveway, that access corridor quote or / flag lot arguably can be no more of a concern than if used for a road with several lots. The primary problem remains multiple and concentrated flag lots and their associated deficiencies, not an isolated flag lot. I'm going to compare now the current code, the proposed code. It's 4 bullets, or 3 bullets actually. In the current code, one flag lot is not allowed without an area variance by the ZBA. In my proposal, one flag lot per subdivision is allowed as part of routine planning board process if it meets certain conditions. Second bullet, all other flag lot numbers and features are allowed with an area variance in the current code. In the proposed code, same thing applies. No matter how many conditions and suggestions are on there, all other flag lot numbers and features are allowed with an area variance. If somebody wants to apply for it, get it approved. Last bullet, section 12069B, that is the section that defines the authority of the planning board. Number 3, gives the planning board wide latitude for site plans, including, quote, location and arrangement of the buildings, adequacy, type and arrangement of trees, shrubs, and other landscaping constituting a buffer between this and adjoining lands, and protection of adjacent properties against noise, glare, unsightliness, and other objectionable features. In the proposed code, in addition to that section, the new code section mostly provides an additional listing of similar considerations more specifically suggested for flag lots, but none unique to flag lots. Current versus proposed code. Proposed code is more lenient than the current code by allowing one flag lot per new subdivision without a variance from the ZBA. No matter what specific consideration is listed in the proposal, that same consideration is also not allowed in the current code because all flag lots are non-conforming and require a variance. So now I'll go into some specifics, and this gets rather detailed. So what you see here for A and that whole page actually is the actual proposed flag lot update. And I'm not saying this couldn't be written better, couldn't be simplified. It certainly probably would need to be made more legally appropriate. But the purpose given in part A, the purpose of this section is to control the use of flag lots while allowing some flexibility that can benefit applicants for subdivisions of a few lots. That light portion there I took out because that's just a definition that we already talked about. Flag lots are otherwise undesirable compared to shared roads because they increase the area of impervious pavement and increase the number of driveway access points on public roads. They create driveways to the side of other residences on nearby lots, fronting the same road, and they create awkward placement of residents behind those frontage lots. So we discussed this barn here. It sits behind, in front of the residence who owns it, and sits behind this frontage lot. And we discussed all the roads side by side there. Awkward house placement. This is an example in Mendon, and frankly, these pictures don't do it justice. Other times of year and from other vantage points, you look back and you see this beautiful yellow two-story. It looks big, looks impressive. It's on Monroe Street, Honeyway Falls. And it turns out it's a flag lot because it sits behind these two older residences with the road going back there. It certainly was added much later. Now, maybe those people like the house because it's big and in their neighborhood, maybe makes their house worth more, but it sure looks strange. Flag lot creation. This again is reading out of the proposal. Notwithstanding section 116, prevention of landlocked parcels, if direct frontage access to a parcel or a portion of parcel can be provided by an existing or new public or private road use of a flag lot as a means of avoiding such road access shall be discouraged by the planning board. However, if the planning board determines that a flag lot is an appropriate use of land, the planning board may approve a subdivision with a flag lot only within residential districts and subject to the following conditions. So the idea of shall be discouraged by the planning board, it's not a comment on opinion of how I or anybody else feels about development. It's fully consistent with the current code, which does not allow any flag lots without a variance for valid reasons. Proposal is more flexible, actually, by allowing the planning board to remove one flag lot for subdivision with conditions and restrictions on that ability, and I'll more on that later. Again, reading from the proposal. This is at the flag lot or subdivision, flag lot creation or subdivision stage. There shall be no more than one flag lot created as part of any subdivision or re-subdivision. Notwithstanding 100-6 preliminary plat review B13 and 18, the flag lot shall also be labeled on the subdivision plan as flag lot requires a road for subdivision. Those references I made were the ones that say remaining land shall be labeled remaining lands not approved for building. Any other remaining land shall be labeled remaining lands not approved for building. Flag lots not allowed. so that additional flag lots shall not be approved with later re-subdivision of the same parcels. So you know the game that would go on. People would subdivide and re-subdivide, and each time looking for a new flag lot to be created. This is an attempt to prevent that. A previously approved flag lot may be modified with a later re-subdivision so long as no additional flag lots are created and all other requirements are met. So if somebody wants to re-subdivide or change the flag lot, I wouldn't suggest we prevent them at that stage, just so they don't create any more.
All right, so Scott, back up to that slide. I guess, can we have discussion along the way here?
Sure, go ahead.
So, with the wording that's proposed there, you are restricting development to one flag lot per subdivision, period.
Without a variance.
Well, but I guess, Robert, where do we stand on something like this? When something's written in town code, what are the chances of going back to the ZBA and saying, okay, I want 4 flag lots?
The current town code allows no flag lots.
Yeah, they would have to apply to a variance to the ZBA. This would allow for one,
By the planning board.
yeah, without having to go to the ZBA. So it is actually giving an opportunity for a flag lot without needing to go to the ZBA, where otherwise you would
I
automatically.
get that. And then later on, no, previously approved flag lot lot may be modified or later re-subdivision, so as no additional flag lots are created. So with that wording, it continues to reiterate that there's one flag lot per, it doesn't say anywhere in there if additional, I guess, pointed out, am I not seeing it? Additional flag lots are requested, then apply for a variance with the ZBA.
Yeah, that's not in there, but it doesn't necessarily need to be, like, for instance, if like the setback requirements are 100, you don't need to say if you want a lower setback, you can apply to the ZBA. It's sort of built into the code, the ZBA's authority, whatever section they are under, allows them to grant variances.
You look at minimum setbacks, lot widths, anything like that. There's no places on any of those pages that say if you want something different, apply for the variance. It's just known.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I understand what you're saying, Jeff. It's
No, well,
a tough concept to get over.
I'm not arguing it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand,
Yep.
I think what may be the question that you're getting at is how is the zoning board, and that's a good thing to ask them as well when we are able to have them at meetings. How would they evaluate such a request for a variance to have, let's say I want 3, the code only says I can have 1. They'd have to walk through those factors and determine whether or not to grant a variance. Automatically, if they're having, if the code says you can only have 1, you want 2, it is a substantial variance. So that's one factor, and then you just have to go through the other 4. Is it changing the character of the neighborhood? Is it changing the environment? Is it self-created? Those 5 factors.
All right, I got something more to add, but go ahead with it.
That idea of variances, and this, no matter what's written in here in the code,
Sorry, I'm answering just.
not preventing the variance from being requested is a tough concept. So condition number 1, only 1 flag lot per subdivision. And the reason is that 2 to 4 rear lots can usually be handled with a private road that otherwise may have been flag lots. Subdivision labeling requirement is to forewarn the owner and prevent future re-subdivisions from each adding another flag lot. Labeling may help, but it's not fail-safe if the prior subdivision plat is not viewed at the time of the subsequent re-subdivision. So putting a label on anything on a plan or plat is not a guarantee, it just helps.
So what you're saying is typically the first person that shows up will get the flag lot from the planning board instead of having to go to the zoning board. It gives you.
if a subdivider wants to create one flag lot, they have the ability to apply to these planning board. There may be circumstances which
Right.
are in the code that I'm proposing that we can't grant it. They would still have to go to the zoning board, but there's, let's say, a high probability that they could apply and probably would get it. Because the circumstances aren't that unusual. The flag lot shall have frontage on a public road. The flag lot access corridor shall be no closer than 500 feet to another flag lot access corridor measured along the public road. The reason for that is the frontage on a public road, private roads are meant to be an alternative flag lots, not a way to add even more flag lots. So you could picture somebody adding a private road with 4 residences and having one set way back off the private road on a flag lot. The 500-foot minimum is to another flag lot. The driveway is meant to prevent excessive flag lot driveways where some already exist, consistent with the intent of A12521, construction of roads and streets, J, highway frontage, where they just don't want a lot of highways or driveways coming out on particularly main roads. This is another one, the flag in the code. This is the code quote. The flag lot shall meet requirements of the district for minimum front lot line width or the minimum width required for a private road, whichever is greater. Just word of warning, this is the one that could be simplified by just saying the access corridor shall be 66 feet wide. So the flag lot shall meet the district minimum front width, which is 55 feet, right? Or the minimum width requirements for a private road, whichever is greater. If the rear portion of the flag lot is larger than 10 acres, so you have the option of potentially putting more than 4 lots back there, the minimum road frontage shall be no less than the minimum required for a public road. We have tried to enforce this with flag lot requests coming in. We've been asking them to have at least 60 feet for a public road, but we don't have any requirement in code to force applicants to do that. Some comply and some don't. The main portion of the flag lot shall meet requirements of the zone for minimum width and front, side, and rear setbacks. So this says that the main portion of the lot becomes like a frontage lot, where you can't build a barn 25 feet from your property line on the front of the main portion, right behind your neighbor. The area of the main portion of the flag lot shall be at least 50% greater than the minimum lot area in the underlying zoning district, but in no event less than 2 acres. Now, why that? The current town code, or a certain current town map, I should say, zones only include R30 and R20. So 50% greater than those is not anywhere close to 2 acres. And we want them to be big, and I'll tell you why. But why do I say 50% greater than the minimum lot area? Well, that's because we do have this RR5, or a minimum 5-acre lot size in the code that doesn't exist on the zoning map. If something like that were ever used, or they came up with, like Mendon has 1 acre and 2 acre minimum lot sizes in certain areas, that's where you'd like the 50% greater than the minimum lot area. I'll explain why. No portion of the access corridor may be counted as part of the required lot area. So why? The minimum lot width for an access corridor is specified to allow future roads that the flag lot could be subdivided later. Less than 10 acres is likely to be a private road, which only requires 40 feet, but that defaults to the minimum road frontage of 50 feet for any lot. Greater than 10 acres, the public road width currently 60 feet. But as I mentioned, the town engineer has suggested 60-foot minimum width, which is this magical standard planning width. And
No,
it's not
It's a 4-rod road.
4-rod.
A rod is 16.5 feet.
Okay, so that's it.
Most county roads are 66 feet. There are some that are 49.5 feet, so 3-rod.
Anyway, you remember 66 feet is what's used in RIG, I believe. And I think this generic simplification would avoid a whole lot of verbiage that I put in the proposal. The main portion lot size, a minimum 2 acres, is for the benefit of nearby frontage lots. So the frontage lots sitting before in front of the flag lot, just to provide open space around them. More specifics in the code. This is again reading right out of the code. Any access corridor serving on any flag lot shall be a minimum of 200 feet in length and shall not exceed 1,000 feet in length, as measured along the center line of the access corridor from the public road to the main portion of the lot. Width of the access corridor along the full length of the corridor should be no narrower than the road frontage. The planning board may disallow flag lots with boundaries which deviate excessively from straight lines. Lot layout shall be designed so as to avoid jogs and other sudden changes in lot lines. Any corners along the access corridor shall have additional width as a radius or angle to accommodate an appropriate future road. And we had an example just about a year ago on Highway 5 Points, and Jeff will remember the name of the person.
Burrell property.
That's it. And
Honey, I Falls #6. right?
number 6, thank you.
Like
Yep, thank you.
45 off the corner or something like that.
So it was about a 900-foot access corridor, and near its end, it took a right angle turn to the left. So we asked if they cut the corner and make that essentially a triangle, so that they could put, if the road was ever put in there, so we would be able to put the curve of the road in there. And of course, the person purchasing it was only doing it for hunting property and will never develop it. So we're sure it won't ever matter. Access corridor length, minimum 200 feet. Well, that's to prevent use of a flag lot behind small frontage lots with a house close to the rear lot line. It's a general incompatibility of flag lot residences looming over small frontage lots. The maximum 1,000 feet, I'll admit, is arbitrary, but it's to prevent very long private drives, prevent flag lots behind another flag lot. And I think there should be some limit, although 1,000 feet is arbitrary, it happens to be the same numbers that Reich uses. And again, access corners must allow for curves and future potential roads. Flag lot layout shape. So why did I make those comments around the shape of the flag lot? It's not a new concept. Section 114, lot size and arrangement, quote, in general, side lot lines should be at right angles or radial to street lines unless a variation from this can be shown to result in a better plan. And I'll show you the next image. This is the one on, this is an early one from what we ended up with on Pinnacle Road. The final subdivision approved in 2021 may have been even worse with more flag lots, but this was a proposal. People wanted to split up these lands back here for hunting. And I think we ended up with 2 flag lots with 2 side-by-side access corridors here. This is not necessarily one, to get back to these strangely shaped lots. So these were 2 flag lots back here from 2 different access corridors. And then this is that Pheasant Run Drive, which ended up being another flag lot coming back to a main portion back here. But it was a strange one. Nothing I'm very proud about that we approved.
In that case, and Scott, remember, we went back and forth over the width of the roadway.
Yep.
Going back in because there were just too many acres of remaining lands back
Yep.
there, even combined with the lots.
Yep. I think they did go with 60-foot width, but there again,
Yeah.
it could have been for less than 4 lots. It could have been a shared access corridor, which could have been a future private road, but then you'd have been limited to the private road width. Well, not if it's 66 feet. It would have had to been re-subdivided and changed quite a bit. Okay, I did that already. So this is more reading from the proposal. Specifics at the site plan stage. This is a case where the flag lot has already been created as a subdivision. And it says, number 1, a single family dwelling is the only type of residence which may be located on the flag lot. So we're not into commercial or industrial businesses on flag lots. 2, the lot being developed is of such a shape, size, and configuration that use of a flag lot is the only method of developing the parcel for single residence, and access to the parcel of land being developed is such a use of the flag lot represents the only method of developing the parcel for a single residence. Sounds redundant, but you get the idea. This is just reiterating the same thing. In this case, the lot already exists, and it's just verifying that there's no other way to develop it. The flag lot shall meet requirements of the district for minimum front lot width. The main portion of the flag lot shall meet requirements of the district with respect to minimum lot width, lot area and width, and front side and rear setbacks. No portion of the access corridor may be counted as part of the required lot area. So this again describes that the main portion is subject to the same requirements as a frontage lot. And why? Those conditions reestablish that a flag lot must be the only way to develop a specific lot. It's a result of a prior subdivision. establishes the basic standard lot requirements with the added expectation that the flag lot main portion is treated like a normal frontage lot. For example, you can't build in the front setback of the main portion. You can't rely on the access corridor to be part of the setback. And it prevents long access corridor area from being counted for minimum lot sizes. For the same reason, there's a minimum lot size for the main portion, to provide open space visible to conforming lots. So it doesn't take away from the main portion. So here's more specifics in the code. The planning board may require the siting of any structures on the main portion of the lot in such manner as will assure the privacy of adjacent properties, and may require such planning, screenings, or berms as may be necessary to protect such privacy at the time of construction or ongoing. Rules for accessory buildings apply to the main portion as with regular frontage lots, which means no structures of any type shall be erected in the access corridor other than as needed for drainage or driveway purposes. Now, I know, Jeff, I think you said, well, what about building the little building for your child to wait for the bus at the road on a cold winter day? Well, that's not allowed now. You can't have an accessory structure in front of the minimum front setback. Excuse me?
I said, I wonder how many we have.
Yes, but so this is no more, I'll get to that later. All water, electric, and fuel utilities and flag lots shall be installed underground. So again, this explains what those mean. All these site requirements are nothing new, fully consistent with prior planning board responsibility and authority in 12069B3. Concept of no structure and access corridors consistent with existing 12020 accessory buildings. Quote, no accessory structure shall be constructed or placed near to the highway or lot lines and is permitted for the main structure in the district in which it is to be erected or located. And the last bullet is not really in the code, but it is in our general notes in part of all site plans, number 10. All proposed utility services shall be installed underground from the source to the proposed building, but it's just restated since the access corridor is next to the adjacent frontage lots. I don't have that up there. I can read it. If not much new or restricted, then why have a new code section at all? Well, this I think gets the heart of what Jeff was saying. And the intent here is to assist most flag lot applicants with direct planning board approval of a single flag lot, saves them the time and expertise without apparent disadvantages to the town, especially if the ZBA routinely approves flag lots anyway. Provides focused guidance for the ZBA and planning board when deliberating on flag lot variances and site plan conditions. That's really the part that gets at what Jeff was talking about. Hope that focused guidance dissuades flag lot applicants and directs them toward preferred conforming lot design options and makes a town of Rush code adherence a benchmark rather than a deficiency for flag lots. So I said at the beginning, I would get back to the statement that the proposal seems restrictive and does not have the safety or welfare of the residents in mind. This seems like an attempt to stop development within the town of Rush. And I say the opposite is true. The proposal actually is less restrictive by allowing one flag lot per subdivision without a variance. Applicants with multiple flag lots typically can use conforming private or public roads options, which already exists and already conforming, or can apply for a variance just as before. It maintains resident safety and welfare better than more flag lots by better adherence to the current code, notably highway access rules and other protections. It has nothing to do with personal opinion on town development. It enhances our ability to fulfill our duty to follow the current town code. Following the town code is not an example of exerting opinion. On the other hand, routine approval of extensive flag lot use in violation of town code when alternatives are available does reflect personal opinion. If a new hardship for developers is created by using separate code section to make more visible flag lot expectations and requirements that are mostly in the current code, then that's an indication of a prior poor code adherence. It's not a deficiency of the flag code update proposal. So here's how we could develop the future town of Rush. We can just stack up flag lots. I say, at what point do we stop assisting with willful violation of the town code? So this is a difficult part. Discussion and agreement, recognizing that the zoning board people aren't here, and how we get this information to them is yet to be determined. But we should consider the overall concept. Should we be striving for conformance to the current code? Should we provide better applicant service with the planning board's ability to approve one flag lot per subdivision under limited conditions? I wouldn't say very limited conditions, but limited conditions. And we can consider specifics, numbers, and wording, anything anybody wants to talk about. So has anybody gained additional insight as a result of this presentation of what the town code really states now? Things like frontage roads and the fact that multiple driveways, particularly next to each other, are unsafe.
Presentation put it together, so thanks for that.
Yeah.
The info in it, Scott.
I appreciate it. Quite impressive. Well, to be honest, it was a lot of work, but I did not have the understanding of what I was doing when I made the proposal that I have now as a result of putting this together.
What you presented tonight, when you present this to the ZBA, it might shed a new light on things. Right now, it looks as though, and I'll be honest, very candid here, the planning board's trying to take our
Step over
authority
on it.
away from us, and we're not. And the intent all along, Scott, has been, as we've looked at these flag lots as a board, we've listened to the applicants, then they get upset with us and say, well, you've got to go back to the zoning board of appeals to get a variance. Well, no one told me that. Now I'm here, now I got it. How long is that going to take? That's what got us to where we are tonight. And with you pushing to get this approval of a flag lot.
It was obvious something was wrong. It wasn't so clear what, but yeah, it was
Yeah.
obvious something was wrong.
Now, what have you brought to the table through this presentation? I grew up in Mendon, not far from that access road on Miles Square Road. And I always thought there's one there, there's one at Mendon Center Road in Pittsford, over by Tobin Road, Mendon Center, Tobin or Toby Road, whatever it is over there. And I always thought how safe that was for the residents, for kids,
Yeah.
because
Really?
the kids could go up and down the
Bicycles,
access
yeah,
road
yeah.
and coming down Honey Falls 5 Points Road, or Honey Falls 5 Points Road, right where that subdivision is with the flag lots and all the driveways coming out. That would have been a perfect place for a service road.
They still would have needed some better way to develop the back part, but yes.
You know, so maybe that's a little different than the flag lot. But I think we need to look at that as a planning board as a separate.
That's in the code.
Never brought to our attention or my attention, it never dawned on us. I mean, there's been multiple lots stripped off of West Rush Road and by, developers where there could have been access
The
roads.
problem is they're
Surface roads.
often done one lot at a time. The developer came as the Fieldstone Estates is, right?
Yeah.
It says, here's a whole bank of them.
Yeah.
You could talk about it then, but when it's one lot at a time, this farmer's got a zillion acres and he just wants this little part for his daughter, right? What do you say? You'd almost have to say, do you plan on making any more?
I'd like to, and I don't know if you guys looked at it, but I know if you look at almost any road in here, you guys know exactly what I'm gonna say. The road frontage has been stripped off because it was easy.
Right.
And there's a crap load of lots left on the back. You know what's gonna happen. We know how this is gonna shake out. So we've got to figure out a way, how are we gonna address it? Because it's coming up. So they did it the easy way, and then these guys, they did it the easy way and stripped them off, and then land in the back. They're assuming they're gonna come back at a later date and do something with that
When you
land.
start talking service roads
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
public access road,
Yeah.
it's on the developer. I believe in our code right now, like Honey Hill, over on West Henry Road, kitty corner from our farm.
Yeah.
The developer had to put that in, then it
Yeah.
wasn't even put in correctly, and
I sense
they
we
didn't pave it, they had to go back, and I think there was an issue
We
with
can
bond.
do a better job. And that specific example, I forget if it was Honey Hill or Mallard's Way, one of the two, we actually rescinded approval for a site plan, a building lot.
Might have been that
Be-
one, so-
Because when we have the ability to do that, the supervisor at the time came to us and said, we need leverage to force the builder to finish the roadway.
Yeah.
We want to, the lot hasn't been developed yet, the site plan's been approved, can you rescind that? And we'll only agree to unrescind it if they finish it, and we did that, right? But that gets to the point we talked about before, that we need to do a better job of bonding or something, letters of credit or something like that, so that we have leverage to force the developers to put in the roads.
And Scott, the other thing in your presentation tonight that absolutely, I'll admit, opened my eyes, because at first I didn't understand 1,000 feet. I'm like, well, there could be some parcels that are deeper than 1,000. Well, then start stacking flag lot on flag lot. I'm like, oh, yeah, I didn't. That was good. That was, and nowhere, although one thing in your presentation, I mean, the access road has to be wide enough along with pull-offs for fire and emergency. And that's something that pretty much has been adhered to over the years, but I don't know if it's always been put in,
Yeah, well.
on these flag, on
I'll
these
give you-
drives.
I'll give you another one. I've seen numbers in the code and in the design specifications of anywhere from 200 to 500 feet. We aren't consistent within our own writings of what distance. 200 feet is too short. 500 feet is more rational, but we got problems there too. Okay, well, I feel like I've maybe explained it all better.
I asked one more. So on the parcel that you're talking with your neighbor with the barn, so you would propose not allowing accessory structure between the
It's, yeah, it's not that. It's,
road frontage lot and the flag lot, or?
I would treat the main portion of the lot like a frontage lot.
Okay,
So they could put an accessory structure anywhere behind the minimum setback. It doesn't have to be behind the residence, but it has to be behind the minimum setback. Whereas now they can put it, they treat the front of that flag like it's a side lot line, 25 feet. And apparently there's no reason that
Okay.
the building
All right.
inspector shouldn't permit that.
okay, I am, okay.
Yeah.
Now, now I'm following you.
In that case, for a new subdivision, there's provisions for berms, screenings and different things. But that would not come up once the flag lot's approved and they build the accessory structure. There's no mechanism right now to
That's
force
true.
them for any
That's
screening
true.
or.
That's true.
Yeah, you
Because
just
the
go
accessory
get You
structures,
just get a building permit and build.
right.
Yeah,
You don't
with
need
just
a-
the proper
you don't need a
setback.
site plan.
Can someone build a barn or a shed in their front yard? Because
Has
that would be their front yard.
It has to be behind the minimum setback, so
Good.
it could be if the main residence.
So in this case, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they certainly did.
Minimum setback was
500
met
feet
from
off
the
the
road.
road.
So that interpretation needs to be clarified with the building inspector.
He obviously approved it. I mean, I knew the neighbor, I talked to him, he told me he was going to put a barn. And I said, oh, behind your house? He said, no, right in front of the house, just back
It's
of the
unfortunate for the people in
of
front.
the flag lot. And I looked up the code, I said, oh, yeah, you can do that. Because the minimum setback is measured from the road, not from the main portion of the flag lot.
And how the neighbor feels about that.
Yeah, the neighbor apparently sold him the land, so maybe the neighbor's not so upset.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's right.
No, I wouldn't want to look at it.
Well, it looks like it's his barn. I mean, that's where you would put your barn if
Right.
that was your property.
What's the next step? The ZBA meeting? I think that would be.
Am I sensing you're feeling better about my proposal? Again, it could be simplified, could be worded better, but the general concepts, you're feeling better about? That they're not really so
Scott, I
radical?
wasn't against it right from the beginning.
Okay,
Because we've been here, we've seen the applicants, and it was just the fact, I feel better. The presentation that you put on tonight, put it on the exact same way with the ZBA. So they understand what we're seeing through site plans, and the two boards do work together. They're independent, yet we work together on this situation.
Similar feelings what Jeff has when last time we talked about. My big thing was we wanted the ZBA involved.
Yeah.
It's easier to get involvement than.
Oh, it's a right thing
We
to
want the
do.
shared
I-
concept for sure.
You remember how that transpired? So we got agreement that they would review it and I was gonna come and talk about it. And then I was disinvited because I didn't want the planning board imposing or influencing
No, they need
the
to
zoning
see-
board,
They
right?
need to see it the way you
Well,
just
right,
did.
and I didn't have this put together then.
But they also need to understand, we didn't come up with this just out of the blue to take something away from. We're trying to help applicants that come
Absolutely.
from town. We're trying to streamline the process, yet safeguard the town in the same, at the same point. So the next thing would be is present to the ZBA and
Okay.
are we gonna go to their meeting or was,
Well, let me ask this. Do you folks know your calendars? Are you able to go on the 21st of July?
I am able to go.
I believe I'd be able to go
I mean,
shortly after I'm out of town, but
I should be able to go. What is that?
It's a Thursday, the second.
There's on
Third
Thursday, yeah. It's the third
Third
Thursday.
Thursday, yes.
Third Thursday?
Third Thursday.
I can't say it.
come on.
And
Pat.
they have one quick resolution, but it won't take. They're gonna be prepared.
So Jeff and Carl, did you say Steve?
I should be able to.
Super, that would be wonderful. But the poor guys have to listen to this again.
That's all right.
gotta get it.
Yeah, I know I can go.
Or double meetings.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, hopefully you're there.
Yeah, I will be there. Hopefully I can get this all working. Okay, well, that's encouraging. So
We have a lot of visual examples, not just in our town, but in neighboring towns.
How long did it take you to put that together? Just
you
curious.
don't want to know.
Ask
Ask my wife, she knows.
Well, Scott, looking at subdivisions in other towns, Barrington, Penfield and all that, they all have public water. They have, a
Yes.
lot of them have sewer.
Yes.
I mean, that is a limiting factor in a lot
That's
of.
why you don't get the big developments here.
That's why we don't have it. Well, and as far as the lot size, you gotta have enough room for a septic on one side of the house and well on the other side. So. You know, that's the flag lots, it chews up a lot of acreage. I'm not necessarily pleased with it. But it's accessing these backlands, like you said, Steve. The road frontage is gone on a lot of roads and there's only accesses back in.
But those could be roads, public or private.
We had one in Pinnacle, but you drive down Pinnacle, look, everything it's up. And if you pull out and look on the backside, there's a lot of undevelopment sitting on flag lots.
Could we come to a consensus as a board? Carl, you mentioned about 4 rod roads, 66 feet. I'm okay with 66 feet.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So I thought that was a good suggestion. That's what Riga does. And it would be nice if it was in the code, and we can just say that's what it is. Because as Carl mentioned, you want to have access for utilities underground going back there too.
Well, the other thing that, for a larger subdivision, what about sidewalks, pedestrian?
So would that give you enough room, Carl,
Yeah.
for to put a sidewalk in, utilities, and have some green space on both sides?
Yes.
Okay.
If you had to put a turn on it with 66 feet or a pull off, would that be enough?
Oh, yeah, that was,
That's what that gives you enough.
For the two.
just
That's
for an
what
example,
Steve said it, or Scott said it's,
East Ridge Road, around the Quake, 5-lane road, sidewalks, that's 66 foot right away.
Oh, wow. Well, and, I mean, public roads have 2 lanes. Private roads, I said they're 9 feet from the center line paved and a 3-foot stone, right? So you wouldn't need a turnaround or a turn off there either.
Why is that road Pheasant Run, why is it not paved?
I don't
Is
know.
it a requirement?
I don't
to
know.
make
I
the
don't
road
know
paved?
how that got approved. There was nothing,
Oh, that's why.
there's nothing in the code that
It's dated
suggests.
back years, right?
Remember that,
It's
Scott?
like-
That was the digging that I did on that.
Yeah.
That came up, the town was going to vote on that to make that a public road, but the motion was never found upon, that it was just left. What was
So
date
the
on that?
town doesn't plow it in the snow?
No,
No,
no, it's not.
it's never made a public road.
I think it'd be like, Middle Road, Sylvan Knoll,
Yeah, that's a
which
private
is,
road.
that's a private road. That was gravel for the longest time. I think it might be paved now, but that's up to the homeowners to keep that clear.
So I can simplify this. I can simplify the proposal and this presentation by just going to 66.
I don't think you need to simplify it.
Yeah.
Well,
that
he's,
was
he's,
evidence, yeah.
Oh,
looking
you
at the
mean the numbers,
66 feet.
okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Good job.
Very good.
Thank you.
I learned a lot.
I was gonna say,
Thank
this is
you.
part of
Thank you,
training.
Terry.
Summed up everything that we've been, I mean,
Yeah.
that subdivision on Pinnacle Road, that really brought this to a head.
How did I miss that?
I think that Rick is right, this should be on as an hour of mandatory training.
And turn
Write
training,
that down for a show.
Okay.
What was that?
mandatory is
He
an
He wants
hour
to
of
count
training
it
right
towards
there.
his
Oh.
training
I'm not authorized. See, now,
We just
I was
authorized.
trying.
if Robert was authorized like John Mancuso was, we could say he did it.
Sure, I'm sure David is. I'll give him your proposal and he can read it. It'd be great.
Okay, so the next, thank you for that. The next part of the agenda was the informal review application, so we should probably just put that off, unless you got
Let
something
me
there.
ask, Shelley, you sent
You
that
guys
out?
all have a hard copy.
Yeah,
And I'm
did you get a response?
I sent it to Laura. She hasn't given a response, so I figured we could discuss it. I mean, you can talk about it right now,
Yeah, because this is the same one that we talked about and agreed, and then we sent
and
it.
I emailed it to them, so,
So the way you get a response is to present it to them in person. That way
yeah.
They can't ignore it.
Can we put it on?
Can we put it
Yeah.
on their meeting?
At the same time
While
we
we're
do this,
there?
let's put it
Yeah,
on
we'll
there.
try.
And notice that I put that on large paper so we could all read it. this-
Thank you, I appreciate you doing that.
We call that two birds with one stone.
Did you guys, there was, David have any, I mean, we talked about, it, I didn't see anything that needed to be changed again. I made you read subdivision.
Subdivision / re-subdivision, that's the safe way to do it. And that's correct, and it eliminates any misunderstanding. Okay. So we'll go in order, we'll get, we'll do the approval minutes in a minute, but there is this thing called a 2018 agreement between the town of Rush and Monroe County to exempt certain zoning actions and subdivision plats from review by Monroe County Department of Planning and Development. I don't know that I forwarded this to anybody. I don't think I did. It's so strange. I wanted to kind of understand what we're doing before I forward it to anybody, but you need to understand what's going on. So there is this agreement that Pam Bucci found and sent it out just about a week or two ago. And it says this agreement made, I'm not gonna read this whole thing. This agreement made 21st day of June 2018 by and between Monroe County, New York, a municipal corporation, blah, 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 and the town of Rush. Witnesseth and whereas and wherefores goes through. And it references a Schedule A. The current process is we get an application. We get to 17 copies, and part of Shelley's role is to send all that to Monroe County Department of Planning and Development, right? And they look at everything we get, as far as I know. Is that right, Shelley? Everything we get goes to Monroe County Planning and Development?
Yes.
For applications?
and Even though I know that there are a lot that will be a local matter, I send them because right now it's very easy to upload the information.
So that would
And
be,
it doesn't hurt to get that feedback from them.
right. Well, this agreement, which I didn't know about, but it was signed in sometime in 2018. Notarized by Pam. Okay, it's called 2018 because it was signed the 23rd day of February 2018 by Cheryl Denolfo. And it was signed by Kathleen Frank in 2017. But it contains a Schedule A, and this Schedule A is all of those things which Monroe County Department of Planning and Development does not want to see or does not need to see. I say does not need to see and therefore does not want to see to cut down their workload. Frankly, most of them are zoning variances. Front side and rear set variances, as long as such variances do not permit any property involved improvement to be closer to county or state highway right away than currently, and it goes on and on. It's 15, 30 different examples of specifics the county doesn't want to get from the zoning folks, 30 different ones. Okay. I mean, some of those make sense, like the county doesn't want to know if we change our fee schedule and that sort of thing, but some of them, are the guts of what you give a variance for. But there is a part B to this, and subdivisions and site plans. Number one, they don't want to see final plats as long as the preliminary plat was reviewed by the County Planning and Development Department and Monroe County Development Review Committee. I assume those have all been replaced now by Department of Planning and Development, but I'm not sure. And any substantial changes between the preliminary and final plats are not in conflict with the departments and or DRC's report. 2, preliminary plats previously reviewed by the department and the DRC were filing or other deadlines have lapsed, and any substantial changes to the plat are not in conflict with the department's and or DRC's report. 3, alternation of existing lot lines as long as no additional lots are created along a county or state road. 4, concept or sketch plans for uses which do not propose a direct access to a county or state road. 5, site plans for interior, exterior structure remodeling, that I can understand. 6, site plans for accessory structures or minor building additions. Now, accessory structures and minor building additions for residences don't come before us. So they probably would not be sent to the county, but accessory structures and minor building additions for commercial or living industrial would come before us.
Scott, before you turn the page, can you go back to number 2? So that would that be like what we did last month with Dan Cornwall?
That's a good question.
Because then we asked him to go back.
Yeah. Yeah, but it comes into, so the part where it says we're filing or other deadlines have lapsed, that's an easy one. I say yes, that would be an example of the Fieldstone Estates. But then it also says, and any substantial changes to the plat are not in conflict with departments and or DRC's report. So that involves going back and looking at what was the report 10 years ago. So my point is, this is potentially a substantial amount of work to comply with, as opposed to just sending everything to the county. So it begs the question of, what are we going to do? Well, the county hasn't complained in the last 10 years.
So most boards that I've been a part of or seen, they still send these things to the county and get their
Part B.
thoughts. But the benefit is that for those specific things that are outlined in those schedules, you don't have to wait for the county to issue your determination. Mainly that is zoning board based, like area variances for the most part. You don't necessarily think that the county's gonna have many comments, and if you haven't received them yet, you can just go ahead with your decision. But it alleviates the requirement of 239M or N of general municipal law that says that you have to send it to them. You have to get their
Right, that's
their
referred.
comments.
That's exactly right. It says, whereas sections 239M and 239N of Article 12B provide for an exception to the mandated county planning agency review, blah, blah, blah. So when I first looked at this, I thought, oh my God, this is a new infrastructure. We need to review anything that comes in and compare it to this and say, do we or do we not send it to the county? And who's going to do that, Robert? Or a pre-meeting?
No, like I said, I've seen them continue, the boards that we've seen it continue to just send them to the Monroe County.
Okay,
It
so we
just
don't need to
means
worry
that we
about
don't
it.
have to worry about getting those comments before making a decision.
Okay,
It's mainly a ZBA thing.
it is.
For the most.
Okay.
Have you ever gotten a response from the county saying,
Don't give it to me.
Yeah, we don't need this.
I've never seen that.
I just said. this.
I've seen them.
I would like a copy of
Send
that,
us.
of that, and Lori should have a copy as well, because it does affect her.
I've seen the county come back and say this is a local matter,
Yeah.
but I haven't seen them say this is a local matter, don't send it to us again.
No, and I was aware when I first started sending those, and Pam would say, you don't have to send them, and I go, but it, when I started, they were just doing the uploading, so it's saving a lot of paper and a lot of time. I've talked to them frequently, and they're like, it's no big deal if you send it to us.
Super.
They stamp it and say local matter, or they don't, and they say, thank you for sending it, so. I figured the more information, the better for both boards.
Okay. Ready to go on to approval of minutes, kind of in backwards order.
Got somewhere, I guess, Shelley, so I got a question. So with that list of a few things that pertain to the planning board, 39M or whatever, so if we're reviewing something, and we don't have county comments back, and we want to make a decision, where can we keep that list handy? Ooh, because I'm not gonna remember it.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if I remembered even think about it, but I mean, personally, I keep a white notebook that's right inside here that I bring to every meeting and stuff like that, but probably shouldn't be the official keeper.
Now that you've made the meeting later in the month, rarely are we gonna have to worry about not having it in time.
But was enough time now.
I had a, make sure I have a copy of it, and it's something I can have back in my mind, because my warning flag will go off if we haven't received comments and the board starts making a decision. And so that's when my red flag will go off, and then that'll trigger, is this, my brain that triggers it, is this something that's covered in the agreement?
Yeah, I guess or keep it in a document.
Yeah, I might be able
Laptop
to-
somehow,
Yeah.
and we could just ask you to pull it up and we could review it at the time. If that
I
was
should
all right.
memorize it, right?
Yeah.
And every whereas. and wherefore. Okay, have you all had a chance to read the minutes of May 24? Any comments or suggestions?
You. Page 2. Under application 2205P. For member Ost, site of the stream. Like to revise that to be a little bit clearer. I asked if the stream was surveyed.
Oh,
On the property. And discussed looking at stream location with respect to easements, easement needs at the northeast corner.
You just repeat that for me.
Member Ost asked if the stream was surveyed on the property and discussed looking at stream location with respect to easement needs at the northeast corner. And then at the bottom of the page, I would just add, as noted on the plans, period. Survey monuments used, referenced in subdivision plan. The point there was there's a note on the plan that said monuments were within 5,000 feet of the project, but they weren't. They were 3,000 feet. The note was, he used good survey information, good monuments down by the expressway, but they were in conflict with the note that was on the plan. I just want to make it clear that he's using good survey information, just had a bad note. Or an inconsistent note referencing.
You get that, Shelley?
mhm.
Okay, anybody else? That it, Carl?
That's it.
I've got one close to the same area, just above the member asked us to ask if there was a stream. 2 paragraphs above that, Chairman Strock explained that the Rush Drainage District calls for a minimum of 40 feet from the top of banks. It's, who knows what I said, but it's 20 feet from the top of banks for a total of 40 feet. The current plans reflect 30 feet total.
Oh, 20.
Now, there's a resolution at the end, and it is correctly stated that it's 20 feet from the top of banks. And that's all I had.
You might even have a 40-foot width total.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's a really small stream, we just say 40 feet width, but it's 20 feet from the top of banks in the easement form. Anything else? Well, I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of May 24th. So you had something else?
No, you were talking about the 20 feet.
Yeah, 20 feet. From the
Yeah,
top of
okay,
banks.
done that.
Yep, it is there. Yeah, thanks. So I make a motion, we approve the minutes as amended. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Member Ross,
Aye.
member McPherson,
Aye.
member Werner,
Aye.
member Werzer,
Aye.
Chairman Strock.
Aye. I will say that Mike Zora or John Schraba already had the updated plans submitted for signatures, and John Hinman did sign them. So I was very specific about saying the town code says remaining lands not approved for building. So they just put in not approved for building and not the remaining lands, even though the resolution says remaining lands not approved for building. So I just let you know, this is the kind of thing that happens.
He noted that.
That's not my big, it's not my, yeah, John noticed it. Doesn't change the meaning, but that's not my big issue. The big issue is there were actually 2 easements on there. There was the stream easement, and pay attention, Robert. There's a stream easement for the townwide drainage district. And then there was this strange driveway easement at the lower left corner. Remember that, going from
Existing
that
road.
lot to Pasture Prime, which was the same owner? And there's a huge road frontage. So why did they want that little easement for that road? So I don't know how necessary that was, but both were in the conditions, right? That they have to have an easement. Robert, how do we know if they actually have an easement? And it says it has to be filed with the county. So is there an enforcement mechanism to make sure they've actually done the easement for the townwide drainage district or anything else? So I saw no evidence of that easement having been filled out, approved by the town engineer or the town attorney. And I said, I'm not going to sign it until I understand what the process is.
Well, it's definitely not your job or the planning board's job to enforce conditions. Traditionally, it has been in the building department of municipalities to make sure that the site plan conditions are enforced. It's my understanding that MRB is possibly the entity that is doing it for the town of Rush. It should be, like you said, if it's filed with the county, it should be easy enough to discover that information whether or not it has been.
So when it's, the conditions say that it's to be approved by the town engineer and the town attorney and filed with the county. Is the assumption that that's happens before I sign off? Or does that happen anytime when we don't really know?
No, I think ideally before you sign up.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. That's why I had no evidence that that happened. So I just,
So-
so I'm not gonna sign.
So Scott, wasn't there on the same parcel, there was the easement for the gas line, and they couldn't produce that? So wouldn't all easements, and I remember asking in
Yeah.
the meeting, and it was kind of, I was shot down, but
What we said
planning
was,
board years ago, I remember John Felson said, you will produce the easement before you get approval and I sign off.
I found the easement,
You found the easement.
the gas line.
So, I mean,
you know, what we said, in bullet number 6 as a condition, is future development shall require gas line easement documentation.
We weren't sure if it was fine at that point.
We didn't require it, yeah. This future development shall require gas line easement documentation.
so there's more than one easement on. the
You,
property,
actually, there's 3 mentioned, include that one. There's the townwide drainage,
Right?
and
The
then there's
driveway.
that silly
Gas line.
driveway.
But to your point, the reason why it was worded that way was because we didn't want the condition to say they'll provide documentation of that gas line easement when we were unsure at the time whether or not that documentation existed, because then they would have been unable to fulfill that condition. that Scott would have been unable to sign.
But as it is, he's not gonna sign because
I don't have evidence of the other two
he
easements.
wants the other two easements anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I
So-
would talk with John to see if he looked. I'm not sure if he has.
So, if we- you know,
Well,
so-
But if
so-
they need to be approved
so
by the
that's what I'm
town
asking.
attorney and the town engineer,
Yeah, it's supposed to
John
be,
Hinman and Robert Marks would have both
you
seen
would have
it.
both known about
Right.
I had a library page of the easement that they could have looked at downtown. The 1940 transfer from Mobile to Buckeye.
them. So anyway, this is not something that normally has been discussed, but it's good that y'all know that we might have this loophole that I'm not sure townwide drainage districts easements have been generally filed with the county or not. Probably some people did and some people didn't. But anyway, so Shelley sent a note to John Sharaba, right? And specifically asking about that driveway. Probably should do the same for the townwide drainage easement.
And you don't have an answer.
I don't have an answer for either of them. And he hasn't gotten back, and that was early last week, I think.
It was Friday.
Oh, was it that late?
Yes.
Well, that's,
Remember you came in Friday.
yeah. Was it Monday morning? No, it wasn't Monday morning. Okay. It's right, it was Friday, thank you.
Mm,
So then can we discuss a little bit here, the townwide drainage?
Sure.
At least one at a time.
Sure.
I mean, if they need to be filed, then let's have a protocol that they get filed and then you sign off. Is that fair?
Well, actually, let me read the. That was somewhere. Here's number 5, condition. The applicant shall provide a townwide drainage district easement with meets and bounds locations that is at least 20 feet from the banks on each side of the stream, or 40 feet total width in this case, with approval from the town engineer and town attorney and filed with Monroe County.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it says,
Pretty cut and dry.
it seems to be that it's a requirement of signing. I keep coming up,
And typically we see them here because Pam and I are both notaries and sometimes people have trouble finding them.
there's a sheet in our application packet that talks about the final signing. And it says that, the appropriate highway person, depending on the type of road, Department of Public Health, town engineer, whoever else signs it, and the last step is the planning board chairman signing off. That same sheet could say, will not sign off until easements have been filed.
We should add
It
it.
doesn't mean anybody will read it and understand it, but we could say that.
But all it's gonna take is, if they need to go in and clean a drainage corridor, and it's not at one property that abuts in the middle of that, they don't have access to, they won't be able to pass through to get to the properties on the other side. If it wasn't filed and they want to deny the town, it's a good one, then it ends up in litigation and, so.
Okay. I think we've gone through the whole agenda except for the next meeting. So we do have applications, as you've probably already seen, from Fieldstone Estates. John Hinman, MRB, has provided a rather lengthy listing of things that need to be done there. As a substantial subdivision, it's much more comprehensive than the types of things I've seen in the past. Like, the stormwater prevention and other types of things like that. So that's going to be a fairly big deal, I think. But what's even more significant is Helios. I mentioned at the previous meeting that the town board has approved the overlay district. The overlay district only goes into effect if Helios gets site plan and special permit approval from the planning board. So that's coming up. The issue has been, to be nice about it, we're negotiating with Helios as to what documentation they need to provide to the planning board for our deliberations on a site plan and special permit. They argue that way back in as early as 2018, they paid their fee and provided site plan applications. However, nowhere on those applications that I've seen from 2018 or 2020 does it say anything about a 5 megawatt single solar farm on 25 acres. They all say the prior one. I know we have a map of the update, and that map seemed informal, but we mentioned it in our report and resolution of June of last year, right? So the map exists. But you have the case of people like Carl who weren't even on the planning board then. He doesn't have that map. And I don't know that we all have document retention systems that we would have that map and all the other documentation. So I am suggesting they need to at least give us the application page that says the right things, like the size of the solar farm and the megawatts and how many acres it occurs on. And they can pull in all kinds of other documentation that applies from the previous documents. But we also need the 17 hard copies or whatever else gets distributed to various organizations like the Conservation Board and those sorts of things. To my knowledge, that information hasn't gotten to the right people or they haven't believed or understood it. So we're still, as I would say nicely, negotiating with what documentation they need to provide to us.
I've looked on the town site, all the documentation that's in, and it is inconsistent.
Yeah.
It is disjointed. It is different dates, different references. It is not cohesive. And
Even the same plan refers to anywhere from 7.5 to 8 to 8.5 megawatts. From
That's
the original
because
one.
it changed multiple times since 2018.
Yeah,
So
but-
Scott, who exactly is negotiating? You and the
Well,
attorney?
Shelley's been in the middle, so Helios has been contacting her. She's been contacting David and Robert and myself. And poor Shelley is stuck in the middle, so we have said what we want. Shelley gives that to them and they don't believe her. So I recently said, let's draft an email or a letter and send it directly from me, if necessary, and the attorneys to Helios, so that there's no doubt and Shelley's not stuck.
Well, for example, they sent electronic versions of some old parts and some new parts, but not hard copies. And then the plans, what were there, about 6 plans? And we got 17 hard copies, but we don't have them electronically. And the application that he sent is dated 2018. So and they've changed the seeker since then. So I'm not sure if the seeker that they have is the current version or the old version.
Can we go through the secret? Can we do
Well,
that?
the town board
The
did the
town
secret.
board did.
Yeah, they're the lead agency.
So, pardon me?
Yes, town board did as lead agents.
Right.
But what did the town board review? What did they provide you? One up to date?
Mhm.
Just a single page, 2 pages. We, as Shelley has, we requested complete packets. And they just did not get them for what you need. What we were able to do, it was sufficient for what the town board needed to do. But what you need for site plan and special permit, that's so, we just approved the overlay district, not the plan that you're looking at. Would you agree with that, Jean?
Yes. And again, the approval was pending final approval by the planning board.
and how many times do we say just follow up for them?
Well, are they, and Shelley, are they, or Scott, are they arguing the fact that it's just pulling all the material back together? Or is it the
I
application?
think they truly believe it's our job to pull the material together. To pick the pieces that apply and from different documents they've provided. That's the way I read what they've provided so far, because they seem to just keep providing the same old obsolete documents.
In my opinion, that's a divide and conquer mentality where they don't want us to know everything. I'm sorry, that's my opinion. And I don't like that. It should be a complete package. They should all line up, reference the same,
Up to date.
the same dates, the same.
That's the position we've taken essentially.
Okay, so you've emailed that back to them. And as of right now,
Well,
they're not
I-
on any agenda till
Yeah.
Scott and you were.
They
in-
are not, they were under the belief that they were gonna be here, so I was sweating this afternoon, but luckily they didn't show up.
Helios expected that having passed the milestone of the overlay, that we would be ready to provide approvals of site plans and special permits tonight. That was their expectation.
But you can't do that without.
We didn't even have
Yeah,
time to put it out for public notice for a
You
hearing.
need all the information.
I would say do what you talked about, Scott, get together.
Yeah.
Yourself, Shelley, send out a very detailed,
Well-
well, this is what is required, and until those requirements are met, and the paperwork comes in as we need, and we're not setting here.
Plus, looking back on past history with Werner Forefront, which was a much nicer example, but just that experience plus what we have done thus far on Helios, we know the issues are going to be screening. And past experiences, it's going to be decommissioning amount and surety type, right? And the decommissioning amount is in the hands of MRB to verify that that's reasonable and correct based on current practices. I would also like to forewarn Helios that those are the things we'll be looking for. We'll be looking for visualizations of screening. And then MRB will be working hard on verifying and improving the decommissioning. Otherwise, you know what's going to happen. We're going to show up and we're going to say, you haven't shown us anything. Right? And they're going to be disgusted and they're going to back and say, you're delaying, right? We're going to have to table it.
Modified it.
So when the town board looked at Helios, you said you approved the overlay. So when you guys approved the overlay, what did you look at to approve the overlay? Because what I'm getting at is, for months, we worked on this last year, and everybody knew the screening was an issue. So when you looked at the overlay, did the screening come up? And how did the
Absolutely.
town board address the screening before this is
We
kicked
went
back
back
to us?
and forth and insisted that they would provide complete screening per the town solar law. And that did require them to actually shift the location of some panels. And after going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, they agreed to do that in the end. Because we didn't budge on the issue
Yeah,
unanimously.
and that's why I'm asking, Gene, because I don't want it to, everybody in this planning board knows, except with exception of Carl, on what that struggle we had with the screening, and if this comes back and it hasn't been settled, we're gonna have the same problem unless, again, I
You
don't know
have
what
to
you
be
guys did.
satisfied when you look at the plans that they send you.
Were you guys satisfied with the screening?
Yeah, let me ask this. So
You
the,
don't do the plan, you guys do the plan.
the overlay district was approved with conditions that
Yes,
the screening was changed, but the plan did not get changed to go along with your
the plan
approval.
that they are submitting to you now,
No, so
well, we don't know what this is.
obviously the plan that they submitted for you for the overlay district approval was not correct, because you said it had to have better screening. But the plan that they
They did.
provided had less panels
They
and
did supply drawings.
corrected drawings. Okay,
Yeah.
so that has to now be all part of their site plan approval package
Yes,
with those revision dates. And that goes all the way back to, all the documentation, I would think.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm done, sorry.
Oh, no, I was gonna ask one question, maybe of Scott or Shelley. So when this packet's put together and given to us for review, is it possible to have the minutes of the planning board for the resolution of the overlay
Oh,
with
stick
the
those in there?
conditions?
Absolutely.
Stick those in there. The town board, I mean, town board,
Mhm.
yes, with their findings, with their conditions of approval for the overlay. That way we know
What they did.
what they
Yep,
did and what
exactly.
they worked on, and we can go back. I mean, we could always go back to the meetings. It's a great thing to having them online now and go back and listen of what they had to
I
say.
remember that, was it last year, or the year before, when you worked with Helios and it was gonna go from 2 farms to 1 farm.
That's what I was just
But
gonna
then I
ask.
think it's back to 2 farms now. No? Okay.
We didn't understand
I
why
think
they
that's
wouldn't
where it
downsize
ended
it,
with
make
one.
it one farm.
1
They
5.
pushed back a lot on that, but so it's just one.
1.5.
One, instead of a,
think
instead of
one-
3 and a 5,
1.5
it's just
megawatt.
1 5.
Yeah, so
So
one,
that's why I'm right to say the application that's dated November 2018 is not an.
Way-
is-
Oh,
Okay.
can I ask Amber, does the gas line still dissect it?
yes,
Still
Yes.
dissects it?
Yes,
And everything was pushed up higher up on the hill and
yes.
Northeast.
So now it operates with one
pushed it
entity.
closer to 390 sort of.
Right.
But it
There
still-
was a
still goes all the way
rush
to the
one and a
north.
rush two, or
Right.
to whatever it was, yeah.
Definitely is a screening challenge, there's no doubt.
yeah, so we know, early on, it was 2 solar farms, solar farm 1 and 2, and it was somewhere between 7.5 and 8.5 megawatts on something like 36 acres.
Mhm.
So the last one, before we wrote our report and resolution in June of last year, was down to 1 solar farm, 5 megawatts, about 25 and change acres. And we had that plan, but it was never put in a comprehensive package, and that would be one that Carl never got to see.
But he came back later and earlier this
It's
year,
changed since then,
Change.
the layout.
he went back, he
So
went
then
back,
I don't even have a
Yeah,
diagram.
they
No,
need all, we need all new
they
packages.
went back to 8 megawatts
Right,
I was gonna say,
and
if
then
they're
back
doing,
to 5,
and now back to 5.
that's still 25 acres,
about that, yeah.
so they must be changing the density of the panels,
They
because
are.
they were gonna use some different type of panels. to
Correct.
Produce more. Like Forefront is doing 22 acres, 23 acres for 5 megawatt. And Helios was gonna use a different higher intensity panel.
I think they were articulating too. Steve, right?
And there was something different.
Yeah, they're
yours are
tracking.
And
stationary,
higher,
theirs
yeah,
are-
yeah, so theirs is gonna produce 25 acres, should produce more than 5 megawatts.
If you say AC or DC, right, it's really 7 DC versus 5 AC, so depending on what number
Is-
you look at.
And
Okay, well,
and the overlay district is 25 acres, but that includes the pipeline? Is that exclusive of the pipeline?
I would have to ask the attorneys who needs to balance of what that was.
Yeah, I don't recall whether
so,
they.
We'll
so
find out.
either way, to, I guess, in their interest, put the package together with the proper documentation, up to date with what they're asking. It's going to be better received by us for review, and it's going to speed up the process. That,
would think
I
you're
won't
not
guarantee
always
speed. I
asking
won't
for
say
the
it'll be-
latest thing.
but it will be, we won't have to go back and keep asking for stuff. They should get it all put together. And it would be, it will simplify our review.
Chairman Struck, someone in the Zoom would like to speak regarding this discussion.
Okay,
Hans Schmidt-Henner. Mr. Schmidt-Henner, if you just unmute yourself, you could speak.
Can you hear me now?
Sounds,
we can hear you.
hello.
Yeah, so I have an interest in this and I attended like the last 5 or 6 town board meetings. And so I was there as a witness for everything that went on. So first of all, a lot of what you guys are sort of mentioning is like speculation. In fact, I know that Gene and Amber are there, and I think they could verify. There was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of questions of Helios. And I can tell you that I saw a company in very good faith coming back to the town board with most of the things they needed. They didn't have the final plan, I don't think, but they did come back. So I hear a lot of speculation. I would just urge you not to use words like divide and conquer and so forth. I don't think it's appropriate to demonize this company. They're a very good company with good people. That's what my experience was. And I did talk to them a couple times. They have done a lot of research on boundaries, or what did you call screenings? We've discussed trees, which trees to use, a double barrier. They did move some panels around at the board's request so that they could put screening on all sides. And they just moved a few panels from the side to the front because they had to maintain within a certain boundary. And here's my suggestion. If you gave them some very, very clear instructions on exactly what you need, I'm pretty confident that they're competent people and will come back to you with exactly what you asked for. There's no use speculating about what they might or might not be doing or trying to be devious or something. They're not. They're just an honest business trying to make an honest dollar. And by the way, it's good for the environment and it's good for the economy to be, energy independent, and produce energy here in this country. So I would suggest that you give them very, very clear instructions on exactly what you need. And I'm sure they'll comply. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hans.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's what we've been trying to do, is give them instructions of what we
I
need.
think the plans have changed because of the back and forth. So there's going to be a lot of changes in the last 4 years. They've been trying really hard, and I don't think they've been devious. I think they've been, changing their plans based on the things that came out of your board and the planning board. And so those plans, sure, they need to be documented by the company. It's probably pretty difficult to get the history of the trail. So you may want to just concentrate on what's proposed now and how that either contradicts or doesn't contradict the plans and what you could approve. It was probably a much different proposal back then. The technology changes, the maps changed based on things that you requested and the town board requested. So there's going to be a lot of changes, but you can't fault this company for shielding these things from you. This is just natural consequence of back and forth. So, I think what you need is an entire package in front of you. And I would stress looking at the current plan and if it meets what the things that you want it to meet. And I agree 100%. With the main things being the screening and I forget the other thing, but I agreed with them when I heard you say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, enough on Helios.
So Scott, you'll put this, you'll work with Shelley and. the
And well,
engineer and
I'm not going to send anything on my own to Helios. It will go through
Attorney.
Robert and David.
Okay.
But that's exactly what we're trying to do, is get the current situation.
Okay. So,
I'm sorry, but one last thing is they did not expect an answer tonight. I was speaking with them and they knew they still had a road to go. They knew that. There's no way they expected an answer even in the next 2 or 3 town board meet or planning
I
board.
differ with you, but I did see a document that stated they expected to be on the agenda tonight.
Oh, on the
So-
agenda, yeah.
may
They
have-
expected to start, the process.
anyway, so I was just for Hans, we're probably looking at August, September. Possibly. You don't-
Sure.
depending on- as they pull
Can't
it
give you
together.
an answer until I see the
Yeah,
document.
until you stay, pull it together. Okay, all right. All right, Hans, we're
Thank
working
you.
on that.
You need their documents. They need to know what you want, what you need.
Yeah, and Scott, our chairman, is gonna work with the town attorney and get that pulled together, so. We need, just what you said, we need an up-to-date package to start with, and that's what Scott brought to the table tonight, and Shelley brought to the table, and that's just common sense to ask for that before we start going forward.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Hans. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, the last thing I want to comment on is the status of that application packet. And I think Shelley is pulling together something to use in the short term. I think we want to wait until we get the final 2022 update on the fee schedule before we put the whole package absolutely together. But I think we're getting closer to having something for applicants to use in the short term. Not that it's the final version. All right, anything else tonight? All right, then I'll make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Member Ost,
Aye.
member McPherson.
Aye.
Member Werner,
Aye.
member Werzer.
Aye.
Chairman Strott.
Aye.